The following program is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. For as low as $1 a month, you can get episodes of Journey of Wrestling a week early and more. You too would become cool, just like our trash elite, Rob. And the reason for this podcast, a guy from Ohio, we'll get back to that in a moment, because we also have Destrucity KTL, Kitty Holbrook, DG, Drake Starstorm, Thomas Austin Jr., and Passion Killer 711. You too could be cool by going to the Patreon and giving us them dollary dues, or whatever your local currency is. You don't have to be Australian to give me money.
It helps.
Yes. Greetings and salutations. It is I, Eric J. Chucky, joined as always by The Boy. This is one of the Patreon-sponsored podcasts. You want us to talk about something? There are some rules about it. You can read them over on the Patreon. But you get a hell of a lot closer by donating and giving us a topic. We will be momentarily discussing the 2009 film Inglorious Basterds with an E by Quentin Tarantino. But first, we got to talk about what's crumpin'.
What has been crumping, my friend?
A lot has been crumping this past week. It's nice. I love having a buffer, you know, so we can maybe take a week off, we can breathe, we can get ahead. But with the podcast, it's nice to be current. Yeah. I like being able to talk about current events for us.
Especially with the new What's Crumpin'. It's always a little bit of current events regardless of what we're discussing. That's nice.
So, why don't you go first, my friend, because I would rather play off of what you got than vice versa. Let's roll.
Well, for What's Crumpin' for me, it's Marvel Rivals. Marvel Rivals continues to crump. Mm-hmm. It continues to crump very hard. It is one of those games where I'm not sure I would like it if I was just playing it by myself all the time, but I mostly play it with friends, and that makes it great.
I play it by myself to get quests done, to get my sweet chronovium, but usually I only play those quests and then I move on about my life.
Yeah. But beyond Marvel Rivals, video games been crumping good style. Started I want to tell you a story.
I love stories.
There's been a game from a studio that I famously love. If you watch the podcast, Obsidian Entertainment is a studio I have a long history with, and I generally tend to like what they put out. Their newest game, Avowed, has not blown my skirt up at all at any point in its advertising. No screenshots of it, nothing I saw of it felt like something I cared about at all. I was a little worried that meant that I was past the point in my life when Obsidian games still had the sauce. And I was upset about that. But I wasn't going to force myself to play a game that didn't look good. Enter my friend, my rotten soldier, my sweet cheese, my good time boy, White Raven. And he played Avowed and told me something about it. What did you say about Avowed, White Raven?
You're asking me to remember something I said 5 days ago?
Just generally, not a quote.
I played it for basically through the tutorial, and I said it was really good. I had an extremely good time with it. It came through Xbox Game Pass, but also my girlfriend is a Mountain Dew connoisseur and redeemed Mountain Dew points to get us the game.
So we own Avowed even if it comes off Game Pass.
Yeah, which it probably won't because it's a Microsoft-sponsored game, but, you know. Also,
it's not doing amazingly. It's doing fairly well, but it's not doing amazing.
So long as they don't have Square Enix expectations, I'm sure everything is fine. Or Dragon Age expectations, for that matter. Yeah, I played through the tutorial, and I'm like, this is great. I've actually been looking for a Skyrim-style game since about a year, maybe half a year, before Starfield came out.
And fully failed to fulfill that itch.
I have never finished a game I felt so bad while playing.
I didn't finish it.
Until Starfield. I went all the way through that thing, and I didn't feel good afterward. I didn't feel good most of the time during.
Hanger was in it, and that was pretty nice.
Yeah. But I've really been thirsting for that kind of thing, and I've just wrung everything out of actual Skyrim.
Well, yeah, it's a 15-year-old game.
Sure. And a lot of the more narrative-heavy games like Fallout 4, it's hard for me to replay. So I've really been hankering for first person, my hands are floating like I'm asking a guy not to hit me at all times. Fantasy, hacky slashy kind of fun. And this really has some cool concepts, some fun ideas. It feels like an Elder Scrolls game, but set in the Pillars of Eternity universe.
And so I was very happy to hear he said it was good. He told me, not that exact phrase, but basically that. It's really good, you should give it a shot. And his recommendation weighs a lot more than the recommendation of any number of internet personalities. So I tried it, and it was really fucking good.
It's because I know you, so I can play a game that I really like and go, don't touch it.
And I believe
this
him.
isn't for you.
I believe him. But it's good. It has the nugget, the kernel of the joy. I played past the tutorial, and on my first, I played through the tutorial, played past it, found out some stuff that I really wanted White to find out about the game, because I knew he'd stopped at the end of the tutorial. So I encouraged him to play it, and this motherfucker blackmailed me.
I like to call it extortion, because it's got an X in it. Makes it sound cooler.
He has been playing the Veilguard, Dragon Age Veilguard.
I got it a couple weeks after it came out, early November. I don't play it a lot because I like to play narrative games alone, and I live in a house with other people, so I am very rarely alone.
So he's been making his way slowly through it, and he's been wanting to talk to me about it, but I haven't touched it yet. For basically the opposite reason or a different reason. Not opposite, a different reason than Avowed. Dragon Age lives too close to the center of my fucking heart, and I knew I was not going to be charitable to that game. I was not in a place to meet that game where it was. I was going to be a shitty internet grognard at it, and I don't ever want to be that guy.
Which, I don't want to go full review for the game here, because we might do one someday.
Yeah, and also, neither of us are done with it yet.
Right. I'm a little over halfway through it, and it's definitely different. It at least gives us a distance of in-world 10 years have gone by, so it can make sense that a lot of shit has changed. But even still on top of that, there's some basic fundamental narrative stuff that is a little different. And it's almost a completely different team. There was only one of the lead designers was still there, I think. So it is different, but even still it's good. That was the problem. I don't remember, but I think Andromeda was pretty much well within the Mass Effect canon in terms of being part of the overall story. It was fine, but the gameplay sucked compared to regular Mass Effect.
I thought it was fine. It just wasn't as good. But Veilguard, you had been barracking for me playing it once I was ready, and this is the time when he launches his trap card. I was like, you know what? I will play it. I'll play this game you're so excited for me to play more of, because I'm a good friend. Unlike you, well, you hadn't played the Veilguard, so I was like, you know what? Fine. And I loaded up Dragon Age Veilguard, and I made my character, and I tried to make my Inquisitor, and I couldn't make him as handsome, because I don't know how I made the first guy that handsome. And I started playing it, and it is a fine Elseworlds. There is different. This stuff is different, and I twigged to it in ways he didn't immediately.
No. I don't retain information the same way you... I can't retain information the same way you do.
They absolutely made changes, and there were some fundamental ones. But it's a fine Elseworlds. I'm having fun with it. And I'm at a place where I can have fun with it, and that's important to me.
And that's why, my joking blackmail aside, I wasn't really pressing you to play the game.
He wasn't serious, no.
No.
Could you imagine if that's how we lived?
Some people do, dude. People didn't know that the Zaibatsu were not friends anymore, super best friends, for a year after they all stopped being friends, because they were just so pilled into them being mean to each other for fun.
Wow, yeah, no, we're not, that's not us.
No, yeah.
But that's what's been crumbling with me. 2 new video games, 2 new big narrative games, started a new book series, and playing Marvel Rivals. You?
Yeah, the release of Thing and the Human Torch has been pretty exciting. I like the new map. I'm really excited that it seems like we're getting Emma Frost as a Vanguard/tank next season. I was really excited for Blade. I don't even actually like Emma Frost as a character.
She's just a great concept for a Vanguard.
I like her power set. I like the diamond body, and there's some really cool stuff you can do there. So I'm pretty excited about that. Mostly I've been playing Avowed, and not even that much, but like catching up on Dragon Age. I'd like to finish it before I dive all the way into Avowed. And working and being really fucking sick. We started new RPG campaign. Well, one new RPG campaign. The other one's on the horizon. So we got that as well. But we've crumped enough, I feel. 10 minutes of crumping should be enough to elicit the comments complaining about our timestamps.
Adam.
We love. Yeah, let us know. Be mad at us. Be
Real
upset.
podcast starts at X timestamp. I tell you what, make the timestamp this. Real podcast starts at 10:30.
I think that the intro's a little longer than that.
I know, it's going to be a lie. It's going to be funny.
The real podcast starts on our Discord, where we talk about stuff all the time. In fact, you can see right now in the general chat a lot of my extended thoughts on Dragon Age Veilguard. You can see a lot of my extended thoughts on Baldur's Gate 3, as one of our community members is playing through, and he requested a place to just sort of talk about it. We like hanging out with people, so long as you can be cool. Not paying me cool, but like, not a dick cool.
Don't be an asshole.
Yeah, don't be an
We'll ban you.
Don't make me make harsher rules than don't be an asshole. That's the rule.
In any case.
Yes, in any case.
Time to talk about Nazis.
Speaking of assholes. So a guy from Ohio had us rewatch Inglorious Basterds. You and I saw it in a drive-in theater when it came out 13 years ago?
Yep.
Is that even right?
2009, right?
Yeah.
So 12?
Well, whatever. It's 2025.
2019 would have been 10.
Yeah, so it's 16 years ago.
Oh, yeah. Woof.
Okay.
Time is bad. We're bad at math.
A pandemic happened. That ate like 4 years of my life, so the math makes sense. Anyway.
Pandemic made... time no make sense no more.
Time bad. And I was not looking forward to rewatching this film. Not because it's a bad movie. I don't believe that at all. I think it's perhaps, of the ones I've seen, one of Tarantino's artsiest films. I think it's one of the ones that is serious compared to a lot of his other work.
There aren't as many dick jokes.
Sure. But it still embodies his conversational style. And it's one of the things I really love about his filmmaking. Is that a lot of his character development and explanation and portrayal is done through these mild conversational scenes. The banality of ordering a cheeseburger or discussing drinks or what have you. It's one of my favorite hallmarks of him as a filmmaker. It's something I take away. I just saw Quentin Tarantino and made it the truck.
Yeah.
It's something I take away into my own writing that I think is really important and fun. And it's why I was a big fan of this film for a long time. This was actually the last one he released chronologically that I watched. I haven't seen The Hateful Eight, Django Unchained, or Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I'd like to. Movies are hard. I'm not a big war film guy. I'm also not a big mafia film guy or crime family guy. It really, I wish I was, because it limits what I'm able to enjoy in fiction. Because crime family shit is so hot right now.
It is?
But y'all wonder why I don't care about Roman Reigns? It's because I don't care about the storyline. I don't care. Well acted? Who gives a shit? I don't care. But we did finally sit down and make time to watch it, and yeah, I forgot some stuff, but you want the spoiler-free review for a 16 or 13-year-old movie, whichever you'd like.
Depending on where in the time warp you are.
Yeah. It's really well made. If you don't have an aversion to soldier movies, it's really good. It's a cool premise. There's lots of tense scenes. That's my thoughts. What do you got, my guy?
I love this fucking movie. This movie's excellent. Thank you, a guy from Ohio, for recommending it for rewatch. I liked it the first time I watched it. I liked it better the second time I watched it. It is full of nuanced performances, nuanced takes on the banality of evil, and fun, amazing scenes of doing terrible things to terrible people. All things I actually really like in movies.
It is, if you're someone, this is again something I lack. I may have talked about it on our wrestling podcast in the past, but I don't like it when a shithead heel I don't like gets beat up, because I don't care about seeing them get beat up. I just don't want to see them.
And the bad guy Germans in this movie. I'm speaking in TikTok euphemism. We're not monetized. The Nazis. They're the shitheadest teal that is possible to have.
Yeah.
Hot take: Nazis are bad, though. So
I don't like that. That's a hot take.
me neither. But I think I'm proud to stand 10 toes down on this business. Nazis suck, and like seeing them get what they have coming to them is satisfactory. It fills me with joy.
It doesn't fill me with joy, but I am glad it happened. You know, like when something bad happens to like someone you don't like, you know, or whatever. I'm not uplifted by that, but I do kind of go, well, is this the result of our actions? Is this consequences? Maybe it is.
But aside from the nearly universal, or what should be universal, idea that watching bad things happen to Nazis is good and based, actually, the movie itself is incredibly well made. It is well paced. It is well acted. It is well written. Quentin Tarantino wrote it. I've never seen him do that badly. I guess most of From Dusk Till Dawn is kind of boring.
From Dusk Till Dawn is a weird film with a lot of really cool scenes. I like this better than From Dusk Till Dawn.
There are a lot of standout performances, and a lot of like minutia and details that I can get into if we feel the need to. But the bottom line is that the movie's excellent. I recommend you watch it. If anything I have said sounds interesting at this point and you somehow haven't seen it,
there's so many movies, that's pretty easy to say these days. There's no somehow. If you've missed it...
The overlap of people who watch this podcast and people who don't like Tarantino films, I feel like would be small.
I don't know that that's true. We talk about like pro wrestling a lot.
We talk about pro wrestling and video games, and that's not really his vibe. Yeah, I guess. So, yeah, if you're one of the people in our audience who hasn't seen this, I recommend it. It's a good movie.
We do have some younger people out there. And
it's a little... it could be described as dry. I don't happen to agree with that assessment.
There's also a lot of subtitles. If you have a hard time reading while you're watching a movie, that can be a huge detraction. We watched it with a friend, and I was really surprised they didn't have a problem with that, because I've been holding off on showing them Amelie for years, because it's all subtitles, baby.
And also it has a very interesting use of subtitles, so it is actually super important.
I love that, and that's something I love that Eli Roth, who is one of the people in this movie, you could see him in the thumbnail there, did in Hostel. A lot of the movie is subtitled when it's in a foreign language, but when what they are saying is meant to be felt and not read, they do not subtitle shit.
There's another thing that I think is really excellent that he does in this movie in relation to not using subtitles. When the character you're supposed to be in the shoes of in a scene doesn't understand the language being spoken, they don't subtitle it. Most notably, you can see this. There's a diner scene where the character who's the point of view character for the scene is French, speaks French, doesn't speak German. The movie takes place largely in Nazi-occupied France. So some Germans come in to talk with the guy she's having a conversation with, and they speak German, and it's completely unsubtitled. They are just yammering in German at each other, and she's forced to sit there uncomfortably while they do so.
Yeah.
It makes you feel alienated from what's going on and confused, which is the intent.
Yeah, suspicious even.
Yes.
Yeah. It's the little things that really make a Tarantino movie excellent. You know, it's so easy to dunk on people who like Tarantino's films, and I agree with this. I'm not, being too defensive here. Because they're so pulpy, very masculine. If you like feet, there's a lot of that. There's all the over-the-top gore and action, and it's all like cool guys doing cool shit in general. But the stuff you can really appreciate, the grit, and I don't mean in terms of edginess, I mean like the fine ground sand of the film, is so well crafted in almost every aspect in almost all of his films. It has to really be appreciated. And that's one of those things. Small stuff such as how long a scene takes to transition, when he decides to cut versus pan, when he opts for a wide shot. It's all just so... It's all good shit in the soup.
His comfort with using Dutch angles, which are often mocked in film snobbery.
Or overused, or used incorrectly.
And he uses... And his specific decisions on... So, this is actually a great thing to bring up. We talk a lot about Marvel movies on this podcast. We like Marvel movies. I still like Marvel movies. I know the fun, hot thing to do has become to shit on them for being bad or whatever. They're not. They're fun.
Looking forward to a couple weeks from now when we get around to watching Captain America.
Everyone says it's fine. Fine is
I'm just looking forward to... I'd love to hear this podcast and then that one. That's
I was wrong. Saying. Turns out they're bad now. No,
we're cooked.
But, I still like Marvel movies. I still like the post-Endgame Marvel movies. They're fun. Guardians of the Galaxy 3 was one of the most emotionally affecting movies I've ever watched.
I also think we as a culture, as an aside, I know you're making a point here, have forgotten how not spectacular a lot of the early Infinity Saga Marvel films were. The first Thor movie is fun, and I enjoy it.
It's not.
It's not a well-made movie.
It's got issues. But it is... Even though I say that to make it clear, I'm not the guy who sits around and shits on Marvel movies and is like, oh, I miss good real cinema. I'm not that guy. I find that guy detestable. But even still, it's nice to see a film from an auteur. It's nice to see a film from someone with a vision.
Yes.
Marvel movies, as much as I love them, can come across as noted, as film by committee. And that can be done in a very good, positive way. Collaboratively, as it were. Tarantino movies are not. They're not that. You feel his hand in every fucking frame of this movie. And it's been a while since I've had that, and it's nice to see.
Yeah, I have to agree. And I think it's something about, as we see, oh, my damn old brain, Guardians of the Galaxy man. The director.
James Gunn.
As we see James Gunn gain notoriety and power and respect within the industry, as that continues to gather moss, or not gather snow. I might be drunk.
As the stone rolls.
As things get bigger for this guy, Jimmy Shooters.
Jimmy Shoots.
You get to see more of his raw vision come through in each successive film. I feel like Suicide Squad was the turning point where we could solidly look at an oeuvre, at a genre, at a je ne sais quoi, and say, that's a James Gunn thing.
I for people who've seen more of his movies, because he has other movies besides the ones I've seen that might have come earlier, but James Gunn is that, he has that. If you're watching a James Gunn movie, whether it's a Marvel movie, a DC movie, a series, you don't miss him.
Yeah.
And it's nice to have that. It's nice to have that. It's been a while since I've eaten that food.
I would say, even though I think I've only seen one of his movies, Denis Villeneuve does that as well. You really get a lot of artistic interpretation.
Is that how you say that name?
I'll look it up when I'm done making my statement. But you get a lot of artistic interpretation through what he puts on the screen. And it feels unique. It feels characterized. Even if we're retreading old ground or old tropes or whatever, you can feel that artistic integrity coming through most of the film. And it's nice to see. And in coming back to a Quentin Tarantino film, somebody who's been an auteur for a long time, it is especially nice to see. There is a point, as we round toward the end of this podcast, that I know you wanted to make.
Oh, yes. So, one of the things that I did...
Maybe Villeneuve, but I think it's Villa.
Is he not French? Isn't it Denis?
Oh, that's the part you argued with. That I don't know. Canadian, so who knows?
Who knows?
Could be bastardized.
Who cares? Complete side point. Just spiraled me off.
It happens. Our home conversations, there are times where he says something and I'm like, is that how that's pronounced?
So I said this at the beginning when we started talking about this podcast. I will reiterate this. I want to be clear. Nazis are scum. They deserve what comes to them. I want that known. Because what I'm about to say is going to sound weird if you don't have that first.
Sure.
I like in this movie that the Nazis are portrayed as people. They aren't cartoon villains. They aren't cackling and throwing their own babies into a giant fire because they're just that evil. They're people. They are racist, sexist, anti-Semitic, dickhead people, but they're human beings. They have friends. They have families. They have children that they're looking forward to see. They have hobbies and interests and loves. I like that because it's incredibly important to remember that that is true. Nazis are people. They're humans. They're not another creature. They're not a separate being from us. So, and that's not to say, give them the benefit of the doubt. That's to remind you that...
There but for grace I go.
Yeah, it's... You gotta watch out. You gotta be aware that the people who you hate, even if it's for, again, very justified reasons, are people. They are human beings. They have loves and desires and names and addresses. Anyway,
The True Nerds podcast does not condone any acts of terrorism.
We do not condone acts of violence, all memes aside. If you're listening, Mrs. Wojcicki or whoever's in charge now,
even if you're not listening, okay, look, okay, don't make any martyrs. That's a great way to fuck up.
But in any case, memes aside, I like that because that's an important thing for art to portray.
To step away from something political and to honk my own horn a little bit. Spoilers, gently, implied spoilers for my third book. My second book was about Nazis. The bad guys were Nazis. And they were the two-dimensional, largely over-the-top villains they are. I think something you didn't mention, actually, that's also really important is that a lot of the Nazi soldiers, some of the ones in this film, aren't necessarily they themselves anti-Semitic. They are carrying out orders.
And they're anti-Semitic insofar as they have absorbed the propaganda of their culture.
Sure.
They don't necessarily hate Jewish people. They've just been convinced they're subhuman.
In my third book, the villain of one of the plot lines was somebody who was doing wrong things. He was being exploitative and mean and petty and selfish. But it was because he was human that was driving him to do these wrong things. It was because he wanted better things for himself. He was mourning a loss. He had all of these factors going in to drive him to this terrible point where he feels justified in making these awful decisions. And this really comes through in these characters. Something I like about Hans Landa is the film opens up with him celebrating how he is the Jew hunter. He talks about how cool of a title, how accurate, yada, yada, yada. The film ends with him talking about how he hates that title, how it's just some dumb PR crap that he's not responsible for. So which Hans do you believe? Or has Hans changed in the intervening years since he had the conversation at the beginning of the movie to the conversation at the end of the movie? Is this a man who's willing to say whatever it takes to get whatever he wants? Or is this a man who has said whatever he needed to get what he needed and is now starting to feel a certain type of way about that. I know I have my interpretation, but I love that it's open. I love that these villains are treated as the complex creatures the heroes are treated as. That they are given the same multifaceted lens through which to view their terrible fucking actions.
It drives home that even if you are a person, you too can do unspeakable evil if you blunder into it unthinkingly. So keep a weather eye out.